Hey guys, ever wondered how to make dull and boring footage like this look epic and cinematic like this? There are two basic steps involved in getting your footage to look... Will you stop that? The two steps to get a nice cinematic look are color correction and color grading. Color correction is where you fix up any problems with your footage like exposure or contrast, and where you deal with any color mismatches between consecutive clips. Color grading is the process of applying all sorts of color adjustments and filters to your corrected footage to achieve the final desired cinematic look. Today we are going to look at color correction. Now this is a very basic tutorial, and while I will use Adobe After Effects for this, you should have all of these tools available no matter which video editing or visual effects compositing software you may use. But let's get started before I have to punch someone. Let's first look at color correction in Adobe After Effects, and in the second half I will show you how to apply the same techniques in Adobe Premiere. Here I have a clip from the Super Mario VFX short film we released last week. It's the scene of Fat Mario getting off the couch to grab the mushroom. Note that this clip is actually pretty dark, especially around Mario's face. And if you look over onto the wall on the right side, you can see that it has a pretty orange tint that I don't really like. Let's look at how we can color correct this clip. The first thing I will do with all of my clips is to make sure that they are properly exposed. In order to do this more easily, I actually like to use a tip that I've seen on Film Riot, and that is to desaturate the clip first. For this, go over to the Effects and Presets panel and search for the Hue and Saturation effect. Apply the effect to your clip. In the effect settings, decrease the master saturation to -100 to drain all color from the footage. Working with black and white footage will make it a lot easier for us to see the bright and the dark areas of the footage to make sure we get the exposure right. Now search for and apply the levels effect to your footage. Let me quickly close the hue and saturation effect so we can concentrate on how the levels effect works. In the levels effect you will see a histogram. This histogram shows how the dark and bright pixels in your footage are distributed. The left side represents the black and the right side represents the white pixels in your video. See this big spike here at the lower end? This indicates that we have a lot of dark pixels in our footage. You can see that in the footage if you look at the couch and the lower half of the shot. The middle of the histogram represents the midtones of our footage, and again you can see a big spike there. This spike is due to the large amount of gray areas we have in our clip, mainly on the wall behind Mario. On the right side of the histogram you can see that no pixels in our scene are brighter than maybe 75% brightness. There are no absolute white pixels in our shot, and it looks a little bit underexposed. We can fix this up by dragging the little triangle on the right side inwards until it sits underneath the area where the histogram ends. This will brighten up the lighter pixels in our footage even more until they extend towards absolute white. If you push this triangle in too far, your footage will get overexposed and you can see clipping on the wall behind Mario. Of course, this is not what we want, so reposition the little triangle just at the top end of the histogram. On the other end, if you bring up the triangle on the left side of the histogram, you are darkening the dark pixels of your footage even more. Note how the dark areas of the footage, especially the couch, just turned solid black. This is causing our footage to be underexposed, so we don't want that either. If there was some room on the lower end of the histogram, I would push the triangle up until it sits just below where the dark pixels start. But for this end we can't really do much with the lower end. Finally, we can adjust the midtones of the footage by dragging the middle triangle of the histogram around. Notice how all of the details that were hidden in shadows suddenly popped out. Again, watch out that you don't overdo this, or your footage will look flat and you will bring all of the noise from the dark areas of your footage into the foreground. I really just want to brighten the midtones enough to bring out a little bit more of the detail, especially around Mario's face. That should do. Let's check out what this looks like without the hue and saturation effect. Looks much better already. Check out how the footage looked originally by disabling the levels effect. Pretty dark and underexposed. The levels effect is usually my first stop when correcting color, and it is simple to use and allows you to ensure your footage is properly exposed. One thing I often do after bringing up the brightness of the clip is to add a bit of contrast back into it so it doesn't look quite as flat. For this, I love to use the curves effect. Go search for the curves effect in your effects and preset panel and apply it to the footage. Let's close up the level settings so we can concentrate on the curves effect. The curves effect gives you control over the individual color channels of your footage. You can adjust the RGB channel, which represents the brightness of your footage, or the red, the green, the blue, or the alpha channel individually. For now, select the RGB channel. The curve you see, which really is just a straight line, represents the input and output brightness for all pixels in your footage. The left side represents the black pixels and the right side represents the white pixels. The vertical axis represents the output brightness of those pixels. The black pixels on the left are output at 0% brightness, which is why the curve starts at the bottom. And the white pixels on the right side are being output at 100%, which is why the curve ends at the top. If you click and drag on the RGB curve, you can add points to adjust the curve and alter how the black and white pixels are being output. You can add as many points as you want and tweak this curve to your liking. To remove a point you added, simply drag it off the little graph area and let go. Enough playing, let's keep color correcting and add some contrast to our footage. Simply create a new point in the middle of the curve. Then add one more point on the right side and push it up a little bit. This will brighten up the bright pixels some more. Then add another point on the left side and pull it down just a tad. This will lower the dark pixels a bit more. I don't want to overdo this, otherwise my footage might end up too dark again and we could lose all of the detail we added with the levels effect. Have a look at the difference the curves effect makes simply by disabling and enabling it. We can see that it adds just a little bit of contrast to the footage and makes it pop a little bit more. Actually, I will increase the contrast just by a tiny bit. Now let's look at cleaning up the white balance of our footage and make sure that the wall doesn't appear all orange. For this, we will use the curves effect we already added, but this time we will tweak the individual color channels. In the settings of the curves effect, select the red channel. Click on the center of the curve and pull it down to remove some of the red color from the midtones of the footage. If you overdo this, you will notice that your footage will end up turning cyan. I want to remove just a little bit of red until the wall looks a little bit less orange to me. Now, if your wall ends up looking a little bit green like it does here, go over to the green channel. Bring down the green channel a little bit to remove some of the green that is crept into our footage. I think that should do. Let's check out what the curves effect did to our footage. Nice! More interesting contrast and better white balance in my opinion. Check out the footage we started with by disabling all color correction effects we added. That's pretty bad. We first used the levels effect to fix up the exposure and we then used the curves effect to make the footage pop a little bit more and fix up some of the white balancing issues. Of course, how you need to tweak your footage will totally depend on the footage you are correcting. For color correction, you want to focus on getting your clip properly exposed and properly white balanced. Also, note that there are a ton of tools available in Adobe After Effects if you go over to the Effects and Presets panel and look into the Color Correction tab. Don't be shy, try these effects out and see how they work. There are great tools available here for you to make your footage look epic. Now let's quickly hop over to Adobe Premiere so I can show you how to do color correction there. Since I do all of my editing with Adobe Premiere, I also do most of my color correction and my color grading with the tool. Here's a very short section of the Zombie Hunter VFX short film we did a while ago for Halloween. It's a section from the very end where I'm about to make the final encounter. If we look at the clips one by one, I can tell they are all much too orange for my liking, and the first one seems a little bit too bright as well. The second one actually feels quite dark, although I don't mind it actually. It adds some drama to the shot with the moody backlighting and it makes my silhouette stand out nicely. The final shot again, way too yellow, but also a bit too dark. For this close-up, I actually would like to see a little bit more detail of my face. Let's start correcting our footage and let's start with this clip here that I would like to be a little bit brighter. In Adobe Premiere, all effects are tucked away in the Effects panel. Just like Adobe After Effects, you will find a levels effect in Premiere. If you apply this effect to your footage, however, you will notice that it does not give you a nice histogram we had, but lists out everything as separate parameters. I don't find this terribly intuitive to use, so instead I like to use another effect to fix up the exposure of my footage, the Fast Color Corrector. Search for the Fast Color Corrector and apply it to your footage. This effect offers controls for both white balancing and exposure settings, and it even contains the levels effect, although without the histogram. In Adobe Premiere, this effect is usually my first stop when fixing up any color issues with my footage. Note that the clip I have here is very orange, which was caused by the white balance of the camera. To fix up the white balance, the easiest thing you can do is click the white balance color picker in the fast color corrector effect and then click on something in your preview window that defines 100% white. I will click on this light here in the background, which is as close to white as it gets in my clip. It's probably a little bit too subtle for you to see. I think the problem is that the white I clicked on isn't really 100% white. If you want to make further color adjustments, and I certainly do, you can also drag the little circle on the color wheel around. The further away from the center you drag it, the stronger the color effect will be. The direction from the center defines the color that will be applied. To counter the orange in my footage, I want to drag this little circle off the center into the blue area, but again, just by a little bit. Generally, if you find yourself having to do huge tweaks with these effects, then maybe something didn't quite go right during the shoot and it might be worth thinking about that for the next time. About here seems right to me. Let's have a quick look. Yep, much better. My skin tone is much more natural and the thick orange tint is gone. Next, let's brighten up the midtones of the footage. Scroll down to the level settings on the fast color corrector. Bring up the midtones by moving the middle triangle on the input levels up a little bit. Ah, much better. You can actually see my face again. Just like we did with the Mari footage, let's add a little bit of contrast to this clip so it doesn't end up all too flat. For this we will use our favorite curves effect, which in Adobe Premiere is called RGB curves. Simply search for the RGB curves effect and apply it to your footage. Then scroll down in the effects panel until you can see the 4 individual curves for the master, red, green and blue channels. This works exactly the same way it did in After Effects, and you can add and remove points from these curves at will. Add a few points to the master curve to add a little bit more contrast into the footage, just like we did in After Effects. I want to ensure I keep the midtones fairly bright so my face remains clearly visible. Let's check out the fixed up clip. Much better. Properly exposed and the orange tint is gone. Remember what this footage looked like before we corrected the color? Nope. This is how. We first applied a fast color corrector to properly expose it and fix up the ugly orange tint, and then we added some contrast back in using the RGB curves effect. Now another task for color correction is to make sure that consecutive clips match in color, otherwise your short films will end up feeling very disjointed. Since I have 2 other clips here that are now much too orange for the sequence, let's quickly fix them up as well. I will actually just copy and paste the fast color corrector and the RGB curves effect onto these clips and just tweak them a little bit to make the footage fit nicely together. There's nothing new here that you haven't seen before, so I will just speed through this. I'm simply applying the same techniques to make sure that all clips in the sequence are properly exposed and white balanced and that they fit together when played together in this sequence. Once your footage is properly color corrected, you can move on to the second step of how to achieve a cinematic look, which is color grading. I will cover color grading properly in the next tutorial. I really hope you enjoyed this tutorial and now understand how to use color correction to fix up your footage. I will cover color grading to get the final cinematic look in a later tutorial. In the meantime, please leave any comments, questions or suggestions in the section below. If you would like to show some support, please subscribe, hit that like button, share the video around. It really helps out a lot. And you can also find and follow me on Facebook or Twitter. Until next time, I will see you later. Bloody hell, can't you just wait until I'm done filming? Haha!